Imagine walking into a hotel, seeking nothing more than a moment of peace, only to be greeted with judgment instead of kindness. That's exactly what happened to James, a Black veteran living with PTSD, when he entered a high-end hotel with his service dog, Shadow. James served his country with honor, and Shadow is his lifeline, trained to help him navigate the challenges of his condition. But instead of compassion, the hotel manager mocked and questioned the legitimacy of his service dog, making a scene in front of other guests. James stood his ground, but the tension escalated quickly. Little did the manager know, his actions were about to backfire in the most unexpected way. What unfolded next left everyone speechless and proved that sometimes justice comes when you least expect it. Stay tuned to see how this story took a powerful turn that no one saw coming. James had seen his fair share of struggles after returning home from service. Shadow wasn't just a dog. He was a lifeline, trained to sense James's anxiety and calm him during moments of distress. So when James walked into the hotel that day, he wasn't expecting to be questioned or humiliated. The manager, a sharp-dressed man with an air of superiority, glanced at Shadow and immediately scoffed. "This is a no-pets establishment," the manager declared loudly, his tone laced with skepticism. James calmly explained that Shadow was a service dog, essential for his mental health. But instead of understanding, the manager dismissed him, questioning James's claims and even suggesting that he was making it up to get special treatment. Other guests began to watch, whispering amongst themselves, while James felt his frustration build. Shadow stayed by his side, calm and steady, as James considered his next move. Something told him this wasn't over. James took a deep breath, doing his best to keep calm, but the humiliation was unbearable. Shadow nudged his leg gently, sensing his growing tension. James repeated himself, this time louder, explaining that under the law, service animals were allowed in public spaces. The manager, however, wasn't interested in listening. Instead, he doubled down, demanding proof that Shadow was a real service dog. A young couple in the lobby exchanged glances, clearly uncomfortable with the scene unfolding before them. An older man nearby seemed torn between stepping in and staying quiet. The murmurs around the room grew louder as James stood his ground. The manager's voice grew sharper as he told James that without proper paperwork, he would have to leave. James clenched his fists but kept his voice steady. "I fought for this country," he said, his words filled with quiet strength. "And I know my rights." The room fell silent. The silence in the lobby was heavy. James stood firm, his gaze locked with the manager's. Shadow sat quietly by his side, embodying the calm James was struggling to hold on to. The tension was palpable, and the other guests seemed frozen, unsure of what to do. Finally, a woman stepped forward, her voice cutting through the quiet. "You can't treat him like this," she said firmly. "It's against the law." The manager barely glanced at her before returning his attention to James. "If you don't leave now, I'll have no choice but to call security," he snapped. James's jaw tightened. He had faced worse battles in his life, but this public attack on... Before James could respond, another voice rang out, this time from the back of the room. "I think you need to rethink your actions," the older man from earlier said, stepping forward with authority. The manager hesitated, sensing a shift in the room. Whispers grew louder as more guests began to speak up. James looked around, realizing he wasn't alone in this fight. The room was on edge, and something big was about to happen. The manager's confidence began to waver as more voices joined in, calling out his treatment of James. "He has every right to be here with his service dog," someone shouted. The older man, now standing closer to James, revealed something that left everyone stunned. "I'm a lawyer," he said, his tone calm but firm. And I can assure you, what you're doing is a violation of federal law. You're exposing this establishment to serious consequences." The manager's face turned pale, but before he could respond, another twist unfolded. One of the hotel's employees stepped forward hesitantly. She looked nervous but determined as she spoke. "I've seen this happen before," she admitted. "It's not the first time someone was treated unfairly here." Guests rippled through the lobby, and James's eyes narrowed as he realized this wasn't an isolated incident. The manager tried to regain control. "That's enough," he barked, his voice shaking now. But it was too late. The situation was spiraling out of his control, and James, bolstered by the unexpected support, knew the tide was turning. The crowd's energy shifted, growing louder, their collective outrage building like a storm ready to break. The manager's attempts to silence the room only fueled the growing momentum against him. The older lawyer stepped closer, his calm authority now commanding the room. "I strongly suggest you apologize and allow this veteran to stay," he said, his voice steady, "or we'll escalate this to the proper authorities." Just as the manager opened his mouth to respond, the hotel's owner, a middle-aged woman with an air of professionalism, walked in. She had been drawn to the scene by the noise and immediately demanded an explanation. The crowd eagerly filled her in, detailing the manager's actions and the discrimination James had faced. The owner's expression darkened as she turned to the manager, who now looked like he wished he could disappear. "You have embarrassed this hotel and violated both our policies and the law," the owner said firmly. "You're fired, effective immediately." Gasps of surprise rippled through the crowd, but the real twist came when James spoke up. "I didn't come here looking for trouble," he said, his voice calm but resolute. "I came here for peace. I hope you take this as a lesson to treat others with dignity." The owner apologized profusely to James and offered him a free stay, but James declined with a polite smile. As he turned to leave, the young couple who had watched earlier stopped him. "Thank you for standing up," they said. "You inspired us to speak out too." As James and Shadow walked out of the hotel, heads held high, the lobby buzzed with energy. Justice had been served, but the impact of the moment was just beginning to ripple outward. As James and Shadow stepped outside, the cool breeze felt like a weight lifting from his shoulders. He didn't need the hotel's free stay or an apology to know he'd done the right thing. Shadow looked up at him, wagging his tail, a quiet reminder of the strength they shared. Inside, the hotel buzzed with conversation about what had just unfolded. Guests who had stayed silent reflected on the power of speaking up, while the young employee who had revealed the truth felt a sense of relief for finally standing against injustice. For James, this wasn't just about one incident. It was about making people see the importance of respect and understanding. He hoped that manager learned something, not just about the law, but about treating others with dignity. As James walked away with Shadow by his side, he knew their story had sparked change, and that was more than enough.